Welcome learners. I am Dr. Amuda from School of Management, Sastra University. In this session, we will see about the sourcing of suppliers. In most organizations, the process of sourcing the products or services is considered to be the first step in the supply chain process. Sourcing involves finding a balance between the quality of the products and raw materials required and its affordability. The goal for any procurement team is to spend less and increase the bottom line. Sourcing is considered to be a process in procurement, and it can be defined as follows. Sourcing as a process to find, evaluate and engage the suppliers based on a set criteria to achieve cost savings and best value for goods and services at a price point and terms that give the required margin to positively affect the company's bottom line. The sourcing process is carried out using a tendering process, and it is applied at tactical and strategic levels with the intent to create distinctive value by finding the most appropriate suppliers at the lowest cost to gain a competitive advantage. Let us now break down this definition and see to the various points related with sourcing. The first one is, sourcing is considered to be one of the process in procurement of materials. So in this place, we can easily understand that sourcing is a part of the procurement process and it is not procurement itself. And the main task of sourcing is to find a source, to find a supplier, and we have to evaluate the supplier and engage the suppliers. And this finding of the supplier, evaluation of the supplier and engaging the supplier will be based only on the criteria that has been fixed by the purchase department. So as per the specifications that are fixed by the purchase department, we are going to locate a source, then evaluate the source. If you find feasible, then we are going to engage that source. And these activities will be based on the saving of the cost. Saving of the cost here meant when the quality of the materials is ensured, then definitely the quality of the finished product will be achieved. When the quality of the raw material is up to the expectation or up to the specifications, there will be no rejections during the production process. As the reductions and material wastages are reduced, it will definitely result in saving of the cost. And the next main objective is to have the best value for the goods and services. As we have already said, the quality of the raw material is going to determine the quality of the finished goods. So the value for the finished goods and services will depend upon the quality of the finished goods. And once again, the price point is to be agreed upon. The price has to be purchased, because the purchase cost will become the component of the selling price. So when we have a control over the purchase cost of the materials, definitely the control over the fixation of the selling price will be there. And the terms that are agreed upon during the purchase, that will decide about the profit margin the company is going to have. So it must positively have an impact over the bottom line of the corporates. Bottom line here will mean the profit margins of the companies. So this sourcing process is definitely carried out by the purchase department, and this will follow with the tendering process, issuing of tenders in the newspapers, receiving of quotations, evaluation of quotations, then selecting a supplier. And this will be the tactical level and also the strategic level. tactical level will mean that the operational levels during the daily operations, and also the strategic decisions should also be done for the long-term plan in purchase. And definitely these decisions will result in a good quality products at a reasonable price. And the main intention of selecting the suppliers will be to find out a distinct value for the finished goods and services by finding the appropriate suppliers, the best suppliers at the lowest cost to have a competitive advantage. As we already saw in the previous sessions, the cost should be minimized, taking into consideration the quality of the raw materials also. In no place or at any point of time, the quality should not be sacrificed. So the sourcing process will be the first step in the supply chain. It is said to be the action which is going to have a balance between the quality of the products and raw materials that are needed by a corporate and its affordability. Sourcing will also mean finding of a right supplier that provide the quality needed at the price point and gives the company a profit margin. So we can easily say in a nutshell that sourcing is finding of the suppliers or finding of the best suppliers from whom we are going to purchase the materials and the means of delivery and the purchase of process. Creating a seamless pipeline to procure these products can bring them to the consumers a high quality products and will keep the sales at the expected level. When we are defining as sourcing, definitely it differs from procurement, but we cannot deny that both will go hand in hand. Though we say that sourcing and procurement process will go hand in hand, it is essential to have the following steps before the procurement is carried out. Finding out the prospective suppliers and implementing a right vetting process. So we have to find out the suppliers and also we have to select the suppliers through a proper vetting process. This will ensure that no mistakes will be done during the selection process, and definitely if any supplier is selected by mistake who is not up to the expectations, then this will lead to the cost to the company. So when we go backtracking of the suppliers will definitely involve in the extra cost to the company. While most of the business leaders focus primarily on the cost reduction benefits which are available due to the strategic sourcing, this benefit should be achieved by the companies by selecting a proper supplier. This selection of a supplier in this competitive market will make the companies to create a value among the other companies. Now, this cost reduction will have many benefits to the organization, mainly due to this cost reduction will be possible mainly due to the waste reduction and the rejection of the materials. So proper selection of the suppliers will definitely result in the cost reduction. When the sourcing process is said to be followed in an organization in a centralized manner, the main factors to be considered are the cost structure, the profit margin and the competitiveness. So the cost structure determines the structure of the cost involved in the purchase of the materials. What is the total cost involved in the purchase of the materials? And the profit margin expected. And next one is the competitiveness in the market. These three factors may differ in degrees according to the different types of organizations. Now the sourcing process will involve mainly collection of the data regarding the various suppliers who are supplying good quality goods and services. After finding out the suppliers, then the contracts has to be entered with them by negotiation. So negotiating the contracts is said to be the second step. And once again, the corporates or the purchase manager has to go in for the product testing to ensure the quality of the goods and services. I mean the quality of the raw materials. Once again, the outsourcing should also be considered while we are selecting the sources. When we are going to have the decisions to be taken regarding the purchase of a particular component or to make it inside, to produce inside, the cost will be compared, the cost of producing a component inside and the cost of purchasing the component from the market. Now, in this place, only variable cost will be taken into consideration and we are going to compare the variable cost of manufacture and the market price of that component. When the market price is less, then the purchase manager will go in for the purchase of the component from the market, or when the production cost is less, the purchase manager can go in for the producing the component inside. So sometimes the outsourcing can also be done for the production of the same component if the facility of production is not available within the organization. So in this case, the cost of outsourcing, the cost of the production inside, and again the market price of the materials will be compared and the best one will be taken into consideration. And once again, the company has to specify the various specifications, technical specifications for the materials, and they have to select a supplier only based on the expected technical specifications by the production departments. So now we have seen the meaning of a sourcing process and what does this sourcing comprises of. So the sourcing comprises mainly of selection of a particular supplier, finding out a particular supplier and evaluating the supplier and engaging the supplier. Now we shall go to the different types of sourcing. To have a successful sourcing in any organization, a purchase manager must have a thorough understanding of the entire business strategy. The entire business strategy here means the entire business strategy for the corporation itself, the master strategy inclusive of finance, production, personnel, etc. So we are going to study about the entire business strategy and find out what will be the resources required to deliver the strategy, and once again, what is the market risk that is involved and what is the specific risk involved with the implementing those approaches. So acquiring the cheap goods and services should not be the main goal of a sourcing activity. Instead of it, a procurement team may center the sourcing activities around developing mutual beneficial relationships. So the procurement team will have a strategy wherein the supplier will also get benefited and the corporate should also get benefited. The corporates will have to extend the technical assistance and other assistances the supplier needs, then they can have a continuous supply of materials. So this is said to be the mutual beneficial relationships. So this vendor-vendee relationships, we say it is to be maintained in a very cordial manner. So both has to help themselves to flourish in a same direction. So depending on the sourcing needs and the goods that are to be purchased, then we are going to select the source, namely whether it is at a wholesale level or at the manufacturer's level or at the distributor's level. Now we shall see the various types of sourcing. The first one being the outsourcing. The most practical and straightforward example will be to hire a party outside a company to perform a service or to create the goods that are not traditionally performed inside. As we discussed earlier, suppose if the facility is not available, if your production capacity is fully utilized, but you are in need of a particular component or a particular material, then you can go in for outsourcing the same component from outside. And this can also be done by migrating the operations even abroad or partnering with a domestic supplier. And this outsourcing can be done even in services like front office and back office services also. So outsourcing is giving entirely the task to an outside person or outside agency, wherein they are ensuring the same quality of goods and services. So this is one type of sourcing. Next is the insourcing. Insourcing is said to be a delegation of a job to a particular team within the company, within the organization. Most of the company leaders will prefer that this option, when it is available, because it is said to be a cost saving strategy. So when this option is available within the organization, the leaders will definitely accept and they invite the strategy as it reduces the cost. And once again, the monitoring of the work of the personnel, your own personnel, is said to be very easier, and the fixing of targets for the personnel is also easier, and ensuring of the quality of goods and services is made. So when we are going for insourcing between the departments, it is said to be a cost saving strategy, and many of the business leaders invite insourcing strategy as they have a complete control over the production of those materials and the goods within the organization by their own personnel and also with their own facilities. Next is the near sourcing. This sourcing involves placing of some operations close to where the end products are sold. So we have to locate the place where we are going to sell the end products, that is the finished products. So we are going to have the sourcing nearby the finished products. Say for example, you are in a metropolitan city for the sale of your finished products and services, and then the sourcing will be nearby that city, so that the cost of transportation, the time and cost of transportation will get minimized. That is called as near sourcing. Then low cost country sourcing. Low cost country sourcing involves sourcing of materials from countries with a lower labor and production cost. This strategy will focus on cutting down the overall operating expenses of the organization. Normally, the countries with a huge population will go in for the low labor cost abroad. So when we have a low labor cost and also low production cost, then this low cost country sourcing will be beneficial one. Next is the global sourcing. Global sourcing is said to be a sourcing at the global level. So buying of goods and services from the international markets across the geopolitical boundaries is said to be the global sourcing. This method also has many benefits and exposes the organization to different markets at the global level, and they can also find the different suppliers with a different range of skills and resources available to the country. So global sourcing will have an exhaustive list of suppliers, and the purchase of materials can be made at any place of the globe. Prime and subcontracting arrangements. This arrangements involves a contract between a contractor and a subcontractor to perform a part of the work of a main project. That is called as subcontracting arrangements. A particular company getting a main contract is called as a parent unit, and this parent unit cannot perform the entire contract. So they can give a part of the project to the subcontractors, at times to the, we call it as ancillary units. So they can perform certain processes, say for example only the welding process, only the molding processes, cutting processes. So certain process will be outsourced and that will be given as a subcontract. So these subcontractors will definitely depend on the main contractor, namely the parent unit. All these contracts may be dealt offshore. Suppose if the agreement is between the offshore entities, and the procurement team can also reduce the burden of dealing with the import and export restrictions. Next is the captive service operations. Some organizations go as far as establishing and operating some part of the partly or wholly owned entity overseas. This will make a room for a greater control and have a control in a very confidential manner because of the security issues. And this method of sourcing will definitely increase the cost. The economical scale of operation cannot be achieved because for creating the security issues and to have a confidential control, more of investment is needed, so the cost will increase. But this cannot be avoided if it is necessity for a particular action, say in case of atomic energies, in case of your ordnance. So this captive service operations will is needed among the corporates. Next is the professional service. Certain professional services will also be given the importance while specific training is needed. Say in case of the professional cases like soliciting actions, so training is needed with the legal advisors. So in case of your healthcare, so these divisions will definitely need sourcing of your professional service, auditing services, engineering services, so electrical maintenance, civil maintenance. So this professional service will definitely has to be sourced, and these professionals must be found with the best talents and required skills. Next is manufacturing. When the organization goes for the new products, either in the form of raw materials or the components, then the manufacturing can also be sourced. Suppose the new product is to be produced with the components that are to be required immediately, then they can go in for sourcing the suppliers who are really manufacturing the components that are needed for the new products. This will save the time and the cost of producing the components within the organization. Next is the vertical integration. This vertical integration involves the merging of different production operations and distribution strategies of a same industry. When a company acquires its own input supplier, it is called as backward integration, or when it acquires the relationship with your distribution chain, it is called as forward integration. So either it is backward integration or forward integration. It is called as vertical integration. So when you go back to the supplier, it is called as backward integration. When you go back to go front to the distributors, then it is called as forward distribution. So this vertical integration is also said to be a major decision to be taken while sourcing the supplier or the distributors. Then few or many suppliers. A multi-supplier strategy will also be followed in an organization, and this is normally used for the commodity products, and it is based on the price to be quoted. The single source purchasing normally refers to a one selected supplier, even though the other suppliers will have a similar quotations. But single source procurement definitely will hinder your production. Suppose if any mishappenings is there in case of the single source suppliers place. So when we have a multi-supplier strategy, then this will facilitate the organization. If one supplier fails to supply, then they can go in for the other supplier's source. Then joint ventures. This is a business entity created by one or more parties. Normally 2 persons are needed for a joint venture. Minimum of 2 persons is needed. And this is normally characterized by the ownership, returns, risk and its governance. So this joint venture will be for a particular task or for a particular time. You can have an agreement for a fixed period of time, or it can be for a particular task to be completed or a project to be completed. Then virtual enterprise. This is said to be a network of the independent companies which are linked by the information technology, mainly to share the skill, the cost and access to one another's marketers. Thus, sourcing can be outsourcing, insourcing, near sourcing, low-cost country sourcing, global sourcing, subcontracting, captive service options, professional service options, manufacturing options, vertical integration, selecting multi-suppliers, entering into joint ventures, virtual enterprise. So these are the main types of sourcing. Now we shall see about the responsible sourcing. Responsible sourcing is said to be a recent topic in global supply chain market. This type of sourcing is a voluntary commitment by the corporates to consider social and environmental considerations when managing the relationships with the suppliers. This type of sourcing is to be voluntarily made by the corporations, taking into consideration the social conditions and the environmental conditions. The modern consumer and the investors are increasingly mindful regarding the creation of ethics and the sustainability of the products. They are more likely to invest in more socially sustainable goods and services than ever before. Sourcing teams and the company leaders who want to remain competitive in the market and protect their brands have to incorporate social, environmental and ethical practices in their own businesses and take the responsibility for the entire life cycle of the products and protecting the rights of the employees during the production process. But this is not that much easier. The complexity of the global supply chains can make it difficult for the corporates to be aware of or to understand the potential risk affecting their businesses and their suppliers. The business needs to be in a position to trace a product or service through each stage of supply chain and work with their companies and suppliers to ensure the working conditions are fair and environmental practices are sustainable. So taking the global sustainability and the ethical issues, the sourcing should be responsible enough. So this responsible sourcing is said to be a voluntary action among the companies, mainly to protect the social issues and also the environmental considerations. So the society benefit and the environmental protection will be the aim of the responsible sourcing. Now we shall see about the impact sourcing. What is meant by impact sourcing? This is also socially responsible arm of any business process outsourcing and information technology outsourcing industry that aims to employ people with limited opportunities for sustainable employment. So impact sourcing is also socially responsible because this sourcing aims to employ the people with the limited opportunities for the sustainable employment. This impact sourcing sector utilizes the workers from poor and the vulnerable communities to perform the functions with the lower and moderate skill requirements such as the scanning of documents, the data entry, the data verification, video tagging and the micro work. So the impact sourcing must take into account the employment which are given to the lowest income sector and it is given to the vulnerable communities and to provide a sustainable employment to the people. As we have saw about the meaning of sourcing and the various types of sourcing, we shall now see what is the necessity of sourcing and what is the significance of sourcing among the corporates. As we already said, the sourcing is said to be the first step in the supply chain, right from finding the suppliers, then selection of the suppliers and engaging them. So the balancing the quality of the products and raw materials on one hand and the affordability of the products at a reasonable price is said to be the main aim of sourcing. Once again, the balancing activity must result in the increase of the profit margins for the corporates. A well executed sourcing process allows the company to establish a consistent and predictable supply chains. This will in turn reflect in a well-stocked inventory and keeping the customers contented. When there is a right sourcing, it will definitely result in building the brand image and the brand loyalty of a company. The strategic sourcing will also help in the cost reduction and gives the benefits of cost reduction to the company. This benefit is also extended to the buyers and the suppliers. Negotiating the lower unit price for a higher volume of purchase will definitely reduce the cost of the goods, having the benefits of large scale purchasing like trade discounts, cash discounts, savings in transportation cost, insurance cost, handling cost, then we have the freight, etc. This will allow the business to keep its pricing competitive among the other companies. On the other hand, the suppliers will also benefit by having a consistent demand for their goods and they are able to plan and make profits out of their own business. By knowing the significance of sourcing, let us now see about the benefits of sourcing. The first and the foremost benefit of sourcing is the cost saving. This is said to be the most popular benefit from strategic sourcing, and this is the way in which the corporates have to aim at. So they are going to purchase the materials by selecting and choosing the suppliers who is going to offer quality products at the best price possible. This will also have an impact over the bottom line of the companies. The next main benefit is honing of the ideal suppliers. Effective implementation of a sourcing process has its foundation on the quality of suppliers involved in the chain. Procurement teams should have on-hand supplier profiles and understand the core capabilities of the suppliers they are choosing. This allows the companies to match the company's objectives with the ideal supplier, resulting in the high value creation at the lowest possible cost. So this benefit is said to be the second one from selecting a right source of a supplier. The next main benefit is establishing a long-term relationship with the suppliers. So when sourcing decisions are made after valuing the suppliers, then the suppliers will feel motivated and they will optimize their own performance to meet the organization's objectives. This is because the suppliers have to maintain a long-term relationship with the companies for their own future benefit. So the suppliers will also have a constant and a consistent supply or a demand from the corporates, and the corporates will also have a continuous supply of goods and services. So the main benefits of sourcing is said to be the cost saving, selection of your ideal suppliers, and having a continuous relationship with the suppliers. Now let us see the various sourcing business models. The sourcing business model always combines a company relationship model and defines how the company will formally control the source of supply and their own economic model. So the relationship between their own economic model and their company's relationship model, this sourcing business models are created. We will see the models one by one. First one is the basic provider model. Under this model, the primary aim is to purchase the goods and services at the lowest possible cost. So that is said to be the basic provider model. It is the basic objective of getting the goods and services at the lowest possible cost and at the expected quality and the specifications. The next model is the approved provider model. When the suppliers are selected, the company wants to take the advantage of high volume discounts, whether it may be a trade discount or a quantity discount with the suppliers, and the suppliers must have a proven record of giving these discounts. So these suppliers must be provided with the proper approval from the corporate's top management. Normally, the suppliers who are not up to the expectations of the purchase department, then they will be given a grey list. This grey list suppliers are not selected as they are not up to the words they are given. So the proven suppliers, the proven record of the suppliers, good record of the suppliers will have to be selected and they will be considered under approved provider model. The next one is the preferred provider model. This model offers value-added capabilities or the volume discounts with the selected supplier, and this is for a contract of a longer period of time. So when you are going to select a supplier for a longer period, longer duration, then you are going to prefer the providers or the suppliers only based on the value added. Next is the performance-based or managed services model. This is dependent on the supplier who has to derive efficiency and deliver predefined service levels. This model allows for a longer contract again, as the supplier tends to benefit as long as they sustain the quality of the goods and services. So the supplier is selected on the basis of the performance and how they are managing their own services under this model. So the predefined service levels and the efficiency levels of the suppliers are evaluated and selected under this model. Next is the vested business model. It is a collaborative model that requires both the sides to ensure that everyone is committed to the success of the another. So that is the relationship between the vendor and the vendee. The supplier and the company must have a commitment towards each other, and they have to work in a collaborative manner. These relationships tend to last over a decade, and they may go in for the innovation and managing the risk in the course of actions. Next is the shared services model. This is said to be an investment-based model that is developed by the companies after seeking a permission to create their own internal supplier. So the supplier will be selected and they will be kept as an internal supplier, and this supplier will supply only to this corporate. So this is called as the shared services model. Next is the equity partnerships. The legally binding formal structures will be framed under this equity partnerships. The organization or the corporate is going to invest directly into another company to build their own capability. Say the corporates will have a participation in the investment in the vendor places. Suppose if a new technology is needed and the vendor is not that much financially strong, then the financial support will be given by the corporates, and they go in for the partnership in the capital itself or in the technology. So the partnership will be made with the vendor, and they will get the required materials in proper specifications. So the models include 7 models. First is the basic provider model, approved provider model, preferred provider model, performance-based model, vested business model, shared services model, and equity partnerships model. Now we shall see how to conduct the sourcing activity in a company. The first main step is to have to select a supplier. Selecting a supplier means investing the time and effort to get to know them and ask the tough questions to them. After all, it is the reputation of the business that is at stake. Companies need to do business with the suppliers that will ensure their products and will deliver the best results. While selecting a supplier, the years of experience, the flexibility in the time of order, the wide range of available products and services, the negotiable prices, the customer reviews, the prompt delivery, accommodating the customer service, and the financial stability are to be taken into account. That is, the factors to be taken while selecting a supplier are as above, namely the experience, the time of delivery, available products, the negotiations, customer service, then the financial condition. Then the main activity related with the corporators, they have to collect the info from various sources regarding the suppliers, and these sources will give about the details of the suppliers of the materials. After sourcing the suppliers and selecting them, a negotiation should be there to know about the price to be fixed. So the negotiations will be regarding the price, the terms of payment, the guaranteed delivery dates, the volume of discounts, etc. While negotiating the price itself, the company has to give what is the minimum ordering quantity it has to make. Normally, this will be based on the economic ordering quantity. The economic ordering quantity is the level at which the ordering cost and carrying cost will be kept minimum. The payments terms are to be determined taking into account the cash flow of both the companies. The cash position of the suppliers place and also the corporate should be taken into consideration, and the payment terms must be stricte, having into consideration the mutual benefits to both the parties. And once again, the integrity and honesty should be there while fixing up the terms of the payments. Then the corporates have to say about the expectations of the delivery of the goods. The delivery times, the delivery volume should be decided while the payment terms are fixed. At the time of fixing the terms, the company has to calculate what will be the holding cost and what will be the ordering cost. Ordering cost will be the cost of ordering the materials, placing an order, tracking the order, etc. Holding cost is the cost of having the stock in the stores. The insurance, the storage place, the cost of the bins, salary of the storekeeper, the safety and security given to the stores, etc. So this ordering cost and holding cost must be taken into consideration, and they have to give about the delivery expectations. So when the economic ordering quantity is determined, one can easily decide with the annual consumption in the mind, the number of orders to be placed and the number of units to be ordered in a particular order. So the sourcing process must depend upon a selection of a supplier, securing a supplier through the various sources, and the negotiations regarding the payment terms. At last, we have to specify the expectations of the delivery. So when the supplier is selected, the various norms should be followed regarding his own background, the reputation, the financial condition, the technical know-how he is having in his own organization, the working personnel, the technical personnel available in his organization, the possibility of continuous supply, the price fixation, the negotiations regarding the delivery of the goods, and the terms regarding the taking up the damaged materials. What is the process of taking up the damaged materials during the transit? Who will take about the risk of the damages in transit, and what is the insurance in transit? Right, the loading and unloading charges, where to deliver, who will take care of the delivering cost, transportation cost, insurance cost. So all these things must be fixed while entering into a contract with the suppliers. So this sourcing is said to be an important activity in any organization to have the control over the cost, because only the strategic costing, strategic sourcing will have a control over the cost, wherein the lowest unit pricing can be made for the highest volume of purchase, right? And next one, we'll have the stability in purchasing the materials. We must have a stable supply with a higher quality and efficiency to have an uninterrupted flow of production in the organization, and the quality of the materials will decide about the quality of the finished goods, and the quality of the finished goods will be the main determinant factor for the customer satisfaction. So the suppliers and the customers must be taken into consideration, and the corporates have to make a sourcing strategy by managing all the factors. The next main fact to be considered is both the parties, namely the supplier and also the corporates, must have a mutual benefit, and they must have a honest conversation, and they must have a trust building among themselves, and they must have their own risk mitigation, and they must benefit both. Both the parties must benefit, and they must have the concern over the cash flow of both the parties. So sourcing is said to be an important activity in case of procurement. It is said to be a strategy to be followed in any organization to have an effective supply of quality products at the lowest cost. Now we shall see the difference between procurement and sourcing. First I will say about procurement. Procurement involves many processes that includes the following. First one is the need recognition. Recognition of the material requirements from various production departments. Then requesting the goods and services. The review and approval of the goods and services. Then sourcing of the suppliers, making and purchase order, then receiving the goods and services, then receiving of invoice, payment of the invoice to the suppliers. So procurement is said to be a wider concept which includes sourcing. Sourcing is said to be one of the processes in the procurement. So procurement starts from the recognizing the need of the raw materials from the production departments till the payment for the raw materials. I will once again repeat it. Recognition of the various material requirements. Then based on the requirements we are going to place an order, because the order will be placed in a consolidated manner in a single order to get the benefits of the wholesale purchasing after sourcing the various suppliers. Then we are receiving the goods and services, checking the goods, quality of the goods, then the receipt of the invoice and payment of the invoice. So the sourcing is said to be one of the process in the procurement. So this sourcing will go in for the identification of the suppliers, evaluation and then engaging the suppliers. Based on the meaning of procurement and sourcing, we shall now see the difference between procurement and sourcing. Procurement involves procuring the goods and services needed for the entire organization. But sourcing will take care of everything from finding the suppliers, vetting and contracting them, and maintaining a healthy relationship with the vendors to cater to the organizational needs. And procurement will focus on what of the supplies, what is required in an organization. But sourcing will make, who will make that supplies possible. That is identifying a supplier who is capable of supplying the requirements. Procurement will leverage the supply chains to ensure a steady flow of goods and services to the organization. But sourcing is concerned with building and managing the supply chains. Procurement is primarily concerned with running already created supply chains. But sourcing manages the supply chains and builds alternatives for resellers. So procurement and sourcing are not the same in a strict sense. procurement will differ from sourcing, as procurement involves procuring or purchasing the goods and services for the entire organization, and sourcing will take care of the finding the suppliers, evaluating them, entering into a contract with the suppliers. So this sourcing will manage the supply chain. Sometimes they will build the supply chain when they identify the new suppliers. But in case of procurement, they will leverage the supply chain to have a continuous flow of goods and services. So this procurement is concerned about the running supply chains, existing supply chains, but sourcing will go in for the creation of new supply chains. Even they build an alternative in case of resilience. So in this session, we have seen the meaning of sourcing, the significance of sourcing, various types of sourcing, the various models involved in sourcing, the meaning of procurement, and how the procurement differs from sourcing.